Welcome to the presentation of Part 2, discussing request fulfillment. My name is Dr. Suzanne Van Hove, and I will be your instructor. If you have any questions, make sure you use the question and comment box. Otherwise, let's get started. We're going to complete the discussion around request fulfillment. We're looking at the triggers, inputs, outputs, and interfaces, the metrics, and technology considerations for this process. So jumping right into the triggers for request fulfillment. I think this is an easy one to brainstorm on. Hopefully the first thing that came to your mind was a call to the service desk. It also could be the user completing the self-service interface from your request fulfillment tool or your actionable service catalog, where they can select from a portfolio of standard requests. The interfaces for request fulfillment are quite simple. Obviously, the service desk incident management will be intimately involved with request fulfillment in terms of fulfilling the request, managing the actual request throughout its life cycle, and then also relating any IT-related requests to any incidents or problems that may have initiated the need for the request in the first place. Release and deployment management, service asset configuration management, change management will also relate to request fulfillment in terms of defining the standards, the standard changes, what's acceptable, what's going to be managed, the deployment standards, updating information, and also providing the approvals for each of the service requests. Remember the definition that all requests have to have documented steps, so your deployment standard, and also approval from change management. So ensuring that we know that we have that relationship with those processes. Lastly, request fulfillment will also tie very tightly to access management. And when an individual requires access to another set of data, a new application, most likely that is going to be one of the items in the portfolio of standard requests. Typically, access management will be fulfilled through request fulfillment. Other processes that would relate, obviously you could think service level management, you could think availability, you could probably choose any of the processes within the life cycle and make a case for request fulfillment. What has been listed here are the main relationships. The various inputs and outputs for request fulfillment are as follows. Inputs to the process would be work requests, authorization forms, the service request itself, requests for change. So all of these requirements, as well as information that allows us to set up the process, would be an input. The other requests via phone, web, email, so the actual usage of the process itself would be considered an input. An informational request. How do I? What can I do? Questions such as that typically either come in from a service desk perspective or maybe even an online support tool could be managed by request fulfillment. Outputs of this process, authorized, rejected, or canceled requests. So we can have an ongoing development of the process in terms of what are going to be the items that we're going to manage formally through the process. So that could be the RFC. I would like to manage X product as a request fulfillment item. That would be reviewed by change. Change would either authorize it, reject it, or potentially cancel it. Status reports. Where are we in the life cycle of the delivery of a request? Other outputs, fulfilled requests, potentially incidents. Did a request recreate an incident? And then we also can have the standard output of additional changes and RFCs. The last output would be the updating of information in the CMDB or an asset register, and those updated records as well as closed requests from the perspective of managing the process. The metrics that are associated with request fulfillment will focus around three critical success factors. One, the efficient and effective fulfillment of the request. that only authorized requests would be fulfilled, and that the user satisfaction is maintained. Remember, with the critical success factor, we're looking at the behaviors that need to be present for a successful delivery of a process. These behaviors would be measured via key performance indicators, or KPIs. What KPIs would measure these CSFs? Well, for the user satisfaction, we can continually monitor the satisfaction scores. After a delivery, we could have a short survey and then ensure that as time passes that there has not been a change in satisfaction with the process. For the authorized requests, only authorized requests are fulfilled. We could be looking at what is actually being deployed, tracking it through configuration management as well as the request, and ensuring that the technical functional groups that are fulfilling the requests are not fulfilling outside of the scope. Remember, metrics will be an area for those that wish to sit the exam. Metrics is an important area to remember. Be sure to spend some time in the service operation volume reviewing the various CSFs and KPIs for the request fulfillment process as well as all of the other processes. Challenges and risks for request fulfillment. The challenge is going to be defining and then documenting the types of requests. You want to make sure that whatever you turn into that automated system, basically through request fulfillment, that it is something that is requested repetitively, that it is a common request. You don't want to automate or put something in your system that's only asked for on a rare occasion. Ensure that you create a simple self-help function. Go out and look at the online stores that we have and then say what's good about their web pages and what's not so good, and take that back into the design of your self-help or the self-service functionality that you can deliver through request fulfillment. Make sure that you've agreed and have reasonable service level targets. How quickly should you be deploying or reacting to the requests that you are managing within your portfolio? Remember that this is going to have to link into the operational level agreements, because that's going to tell us our resources that we have to address the requests. Make sure that we have an agreement with our user community and our business on costs. Making sure that we also have activities, or defining the activities, and then who's also authorized to request them, so that you have that validation and verification set of activities within your process flow, within your workflow. And then creating that standardized fulfillment procedure. Even though you might have a broad range of items in your portfolio that you're going to work within or manage by request fulfillment, make sure that you can standardize the procedures in terms of fulfillment. The risks for request fulfillment: one is a poorly defined scope. If you're all over the map and saying, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that, you have no control. Ensure that you sit and you think carefully, what are the capabilities that you currently have in your IT organization, and how can you manage them? Most organizations will already have groups of individuals who are managing desktops, who are managing applications, and the availability or the deployment of those. Talk with those groups and ensure that what they do, not to stop their jobs, but in order to make them a little bit easier, instead of being that forward-facing piece to the user community, can we use a request fulfillment process? Make sure that that interface is simple and it gets the job done. We don't need to be overly complex. If we put too many choices on, it confuses the user, and it really does not help the efficiency or the effectiveness of this process. Poorly defined or designed workflow processes. Again, having the end goal of being efficient and direct will help ensure that you bypass or not address this potential risk. And then lastly, the inadequate monitoring. Make sure that your tool or your workflow, whatever you're using, is able to follow and track at what stage in the life cycle of the fulfillment process each request is, and allowing the service desk to monitor and manage that process. Technology considerations for request fulfillment. Again, there is a direct link to incident management because that most requests will come to the service desk directly. We need to make sure that the service desk agent is completely aware of the difference between a request and an incident. We also will have that link between the CMS and the CMDB of understanding what resources, what CIs are available and their impact to the performance of the services that are being delivered, or the impact to what the requester has asked and what their operational functionality currently is. Other technology considerations, and for a really efficient request fulfillment, having that front-end self-help, self-service. Being able to have that capability on your website using an appropriate tool really is a form of efficiency that most organizations will embrace when they roll out the request fulfillment process. You need to be able to integrate the back-end processes to that system. So the workflow management, the link to configuration management, all of those need to be able to dovetail and interact with that web front end. Lastly, making sure that your tool will help define workflow and make that workflow design easier, and ensure that the tool will also allow the prioritization, escalation requirements of the request, as well as providing good reporting. If you have any questions, please make sure that you use the question and comment box. Thanks very much for joining us today.